He'll make it for sure. Now that's why I backed him on TABtouch.
Hey, Luke!
Yes, Gene Simmons?
He's probably the best when it comes to this stuff!
Thanks, Gene.
You've got the touch! You got the touch, you got the power. Got the touch? Choose TABtouch. Better your bet. Download the app today.
Chances are you're about to lose. For free and confidential support, call 1-800-858-858 or visit gamblinghelponline.org.au.
Hoops Heaven proudly brings to you Basketball Hustle.
Ellis fumbled the ball. 2 on the shot clock. Goes up a prayer. Yes! As he was falling to the ground, it's a 3. He shot it literally from the hip.
Definitely a highlight.
Here come the Billikens. 4 on 2. McCall. Ellis. Left corner.
We're missing out.
Bang! From way down under. Cody Ellis.
Now it's time for another episode of Hoops Heaven's Basketball Hustle.
Hello and welcome to Hoops Heaven's Basketball Hustle. We're 7 rounds down now. It's amazing to think, Cody, we're almost halfway through the NBL season. We've got some teams that have already played 11 games in this season. It feels like we're still in the early stages, but the reality is we're not. And the reality is, if you told us 2 weeks ago that the New Zealand Breakers and the Southeast Melbourne Phoenix were the 2 hottest teams in the league, I think you would have made a lot of money thanks to TABtouch.
Yeah.
Let's put it that way. So we'll discuss that because the New Zealand Breakers had an incredible weekend by a combined 61 points, and the Southeast Melbourne Phoenix weren't far behind, and it's their defense. Mm-hmm. They're doing it. We talked about how at the start of the season they couldn't defend anybody. Right now, nobody can score against them. So congratulations to what the Phoenix and the Breakers are doing. We'll discuss that. Unfortunately, the Tasmania Jack Jumpers, they still can't score.
No.
Cody, they have not solved that problem. The Cairns Taipans keep getting players hurt more and more every single game. Very mixed weekends, it's fair to say, for the Perth Wildcats, the Sydney Kings and Melbourne United. And disappointing losses for the Illawarra Hawks and Adelaide 36ers, who now play each other this coming Sunday after a bit of a break to try to hit back as well. So plenty for us to get through there. We're here thanks to TABtouch as always, as well as Hoops Heaven. We'll get some votes from Damian Martin and Simon Mitchell in our awards, but that's enough from me to start. I'm Chris Pike, but Cody Ellis, thanks for joining me, and I'm not sure you got your wish about much more exciting basketball, but still a lot to talk about.
Yeah, no, look, again, not a fantastic round of basketball. A couple better games. It's slowly getting there, but it's taken some time, unfortunately. But look, some absolute standout teams and some not so standout teams. So It's you're right, lots to get through, and plenty to have a chat about. And
of course, one of your old teammates, Mitch Norton, will play his 350th game on Thursday night. We'll talk about that later on. And we just saw Jesse Wagstaff break the games record of the Perth Wildcats as well. I want to get your thoughts on that to start with, because you've been around the Wildcats your whole life. Mm-hmm. And in any of those sessions sitting around the pool talking to your dad, did you ever imagine anyone over the last 20 years would break that record from Ricky Grace?
Yeah, no, that's one of those records that you kind of thought would just stand the test of time and not get broken. So, look, I mean, Jesse's done so much for the club and the league, and he's to be able to break a record like that, and to be able to break a record from one of the all-time greats is something pretty impressive. So, look, they didn't quite do him justice on that game where he broke it, but they did on the game where he tied it. So
at least he got on the court this time.
Yes, exactly. So no, it's unreal. It's a heck of an achievement, and it's a lot of games. It's a lot of games.
There can't be any debate anymore that his number 24 will be the next one up in the rafters, is there?
No, not at all. I don't think there was a debate anyway. Mm-hmm. I think that was always going to happen. That 24 was always going to go up there. It's just whenever he decides to retire.
Yes. Is he the most casual great player that you've ever seen? Because the moment he steps out of the basketball arena, he never thinks about basketball, and he goes about his daily life. He could walk down the street and he's wearing his board shorts and his thongs and a singlet, and you wouldn't know that he's a basketball player, except the fact that he's 6'8" tall. I mean, it's amazing that he's as focused as anybody when he's inside his work as a basketball player, but he's so casual and laid back outside it.
Yeah, he certainly is. And him and all his degrees that that he's accumulated over the years. And yeah, look, it's pretty impressive how he can just turn it on and off like that. And like you said, if it wasn't for the fact that he was 6'8", I think he would go fairly unnoticed just in the public eye. But he's always been that guy that not always lights up the stat sheet, but as soon as he's on, his impact is felt. And you even see that now. When he comes onto the court, they're just a different team, and he's such a level head for them, and obviously one of the all-time greats. So look, heck of an achievement.
Yes. Okay, so round 7 was a big weekend because we had double headers pretty much across the board, and then also a Monday night game for Melbourne Cup Eve. So this feels like a lifetime ago. Back on Thursday night, Melbourne United beat the Sydney Kings 87-83. Then we saw the Southeast Melbourne Phoenix first game under Josh King. They got the win in Launceston against the Jack Jumpers 79-77, and then we finally saw a high-scoring game.
Yeah.
We actually saw some shots fall, Cody. The Perth Wildcats won 13 against the Illawarra Hawks 105. New Zealand Breakers, we'll get to them shortly. They're playing incredibly right now. 109-82 against the Adelaide 36ers. The Brisbane Bullets 92-88 in what did turn out to be the Sunshine Slog. Cody, you were on the money last week. The Southeast Melbourne Phoenix then again on Sunday 100-76 over the Perth Wildcats. The Sydney Kings big winners over the Jack Jumpers 88-60. And then on Monday night, I think potentially the best performance of the season from the Breakers. 113 against a full strength and a reasonably rested Melbourne United, 113-79. We'll break all that down in a bit more detail, but what stands out?
Look, finally some teams scoring points with the Cats and the Hawks game, and who'd have thought that a high score like that would be here in Perth at RAC in a gym that's not exactly known to be a shooter's gym. And
we've got five teams scoring over 100.
Yeah,
there you go.
That's crazy, isn't it? I know. How about that? So, look, it was good to see some shots fall, but hopefully we can see a bit more of that because the whole defensive game isn't great viewing.
No,
but I also don't think defensively teams are fantastic at the moment. So it was good to see some scores put up.
Let's get to our votes in our awards to start the show, starting with Simon Mitchell with his Player of the Year award votes, thanks to Sports Card World, and his votes probably reflect what we saw across the weekend, where the Phoenix and the Breakers were the two standout teams. So 4 of the 5 players come from those 2 teams, and I think fair enough too. Parker Jackson-Cartwright with the 5 votes, Matt Hurt with the 4, Sam Menenga the 3, Nathan Sobey the 2, and then the one outlier is James Bateman from the Bullets with the 1. I want to start with Parker Jackson-Cartwright because I think clearly right now he's the best player in the league. He is unstoppable, but both scoring himself, but creating for his teammates. When he gets a couple of feet inside the arc, and he can either go to score, he can create for his teammates. He's completely unstoppable right now.
He really is. I don't think there's anyone in the league that can stay in front of him. Yeah. He's so quick, and they were talking on the in the United and the Breakers game about putting a bit more length on him and giving him that gap, but he just gets that head of steam, and you just can't stay in front of him. He's too quick. He's too crafty. As soon as he gets his feet in the paint, it's either a score at the rim or he's kicking out for a great shot because everyone collapses in. He's on another playing field right now than anyone else, and it's a lot of fun to watch. Yeah. But I mean, he was absolutely far and away the best player in the league at the moment. Yeah. So loving watching him. He's great.
Happy with the rest of the votes there too?
Absolutely. I think Hurt has been awesome, and especially this round gone past. I mean, he's been super important for that team all season. Yeah. I mean, if it wasn't for him, they would have lost some games by 40 or 50 points. So he's been elite and just an absolute scoring machine. Menenga was great, especially against Melbourne. He just, again, a man amongst boys, it almost seemed like, which is crazy to think against the United. So Sobes was great. I mean, just starting to get into a bit of a rhythm and seeing some shots fall and getting to the rim, and had the go-ahead in the first game.
Yes, he did.
Bucket at the rim, which was great. And then Bateman, look, he's been really good. Yep. I think he's been tough for Brizzy, and kind of playing him off the ball a bit has been a bit of a stroke of genius. Yep. So again, all those 5 were certainly deserving.
Best defensive player votes from Damian Martin. We heard coming into this season that Freddie Gillespie was going to be the most dominant defensive player we've seen in years in the NBL. He hadn't quite delivered early on, but we saw signs of what he can do defensively, especially against Adelaide. I think he had 5 blocks against the 36ers, and he was really good, not only blocking shots or rebounding, but his physicality and his ability to come out and set screens and be physical was terrific in both those games. Malik Lewis, we don't necessarily think of next stars being defensively minded players, but I think the main reason he's in this starting lineup is because he can shoot, but also he's a really good defender for the Phoenix. So he's doing a great job. And Kareem Lopez, for a 17-year-old to be doing what he's doing, I know he's having some exciting offensive plays. Some of his dunks are incredible, but his defensive work for a 17-year-old is defying logic in a lot of ways as well. Again, no surprise that all three of those votes come from the two teams who were standouts.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Gillespie was great all weekend. I think you're right. Getting those blocks is big, but I think just the amount of shots he changes as well, which don't go on the stat sheet. Yeah. And the fact that people get into the keyway and see him come across, they're always kicking it out or dumping it off. It's he's been awesome. Blake Lewis has constantly been guarding guys a lot smaller than him, picking up full court and kind of playing into how King wants him to play, which is great. Yeah. He just reads the game really well defensively. And then Lopez, look, I think he was awesome, especially yesterday in the Melbourne game. So very fun. It's interesting that we see two next stars in the defensive column. So, I mean, Lopez just plays like he's a late 20s, early 30s player, not a 17-year-old kid. So he's certainly got some excitement around him.
Have you heard him talk as well?
Yeah.
His English is perfect.
Yeah.
I know he's spent a bit of time in the US,
yeah.
But for a guy who comes from Mexico, he's got perfect English as well. So he's got a lot of things covered for a 17-year-old, doesn't he?
It's all very impressive, isn't it?
Yes. Let's stick with the New Zealand Breakers, because we've talked all season long about how they have every excuse in the world to think that this is too hard for us. We've travelled to the US for 2 weeks. We've travelled more than any other team in the league already, even if you take that out. We've had constant double-doubles since we've been back in the league. Even this weekend, they play at home on Saturday night, and then they play in Melbourne on Monday night. But they don't want to use any excuses. There are no excuse basketball club right now, and we thought they might have hit the wall when they did have that big loss to the Phoenix. But they responded a few days later and beat the Kings in Sydney, and now these two wins against the 36ers by 27 points, who the 36ers were fresh. They hadn't played for 9 days, and they had been playing really well before that. They were at full strength, so no excuse for the 36ers, but they blew them out by 27, and then to beat Melbourne United in Melbourne by 34 points, when Melbourne, they had Daly, they had Illy, they had everybody out there. It's incredible what they're doing. How do you sum up what they're doing?
Look, it's super impressive. It's just all business. Yeah. Coming out and just playing hard every night. Yeah. I mean, they've got 3, key players out, and it doesn't matter. It's just that next man up mentality, which is awesome to see. I think the Melbourne game, they could have won that by 40 easily. If it wasn't for Krebs and Cameron making shots, then it could have been really ugly for Melbourne. I mean, it already was, but it could have been awful. But yeah, look, that's some massive wins. You beat the Kings, you beat the Sixers, you beat Melbourne. They're kind of 3 of the top tier teams that we're talking about, and all fairly convincingly. And just, they almost look unstoppable with, especially the way PJC's playing. Like, it's just, he's on another level, like we've already spoken about. But Menenga's been great, and you can just see his growth constantly. I think he's been awesome. Lopez, again, playing like a veteran, not a kid. They're really fun to watch. I think Mooney's come in, and while he could probably be taking more shots, he's just given it up and playing that team basketball. There's no one on that team that is hungry for shots and wants more shots, and I'm sure they personally might want to, but they're all playing together and they're playing as a team, and I think that's really what's getting it done for them.
Some of the numbers after the game in that win against Melbourne were incredible. So they shot 66% from the field for the entire game, which is the best any road team has ever shot since 1994. Yep. It's the best any team's ever shot inside John Cain Arena, the best ever for the New Zealand Breakers, and they did it against what we think is the best defensive team in the league in Melbourne, especially when they were able to rotate between Daly, Illy and Flynn Cameron on Parker Jackson-Cartwright, but it didn't matter at all. It was an amazing performance.
Oh, just extremely impressive, especially for, like we said, 3 key players out, all the travel they've done so far. It's a backup, like that's the back of their double header on the weekend, and on the road, so many things just going against them, but they don't care. It's just, the next game is just as important as the one they just played. And the next man up mentality, I think, is the reason why they're been so successful. Just everyone's stepping up and playing their role and doing the right things. And they shot the lights out. It was very impressive.
Yeah, I mean, the players they're missing. I mean, you take out Mitch McCarron, Max Darling, Mojave King. I mean, they're either starting or playing 20-plus minutes. You take 3 players that important out of any other team, and and they probably really struggle to compete.
Yeah.
But it just doesn't stop them. And, it comes back to PJC. He was good last year, really good last year, but I felt like sharing the playmaking role with Will McDowell-White maybe limited his impact a little bit. We saw that at times when Will was missing, Parker probably became better.
Yeah.
So I think they saw that this year, and that's why they didn't really sign another point guard for the team. They wanted the ball in his hands. He plays 90% of the game. The ball's in his hands 80% of the game, and you want that because his numbers across the two games: 48 points, 13 assists, and then I'm not sure his numbers against Adelaide, but 9 of 12 against Melbourne, 5 of 6 at the free throw line. So efficient, doesn't turn the ball over, doesn't make mistakes, and makes everyone else around him better. Everyone looks a better player with him as their point guard, and I think it was a masterstroke to not go with another point guard and just give him the keys.
Absolutely, and I think that like you said, we saw last year when Will was hurt, which was a majority of the season, unfortunately. Parker Jackson-Cartwright was just a different player completely when he was running the show, and they were a different team with him running the show as well. As good as Will McDowell-White is, it was just a different look for them. And look, absolutely, it's great that they've handed PJC the keys because, like we said, he's clearly the best player in the league at the moment. Both being able to score himself but get everyone else involved. And a fun point guard to play with for sure.
Well, you're a great person to ask. How would you like to play in a pick and roll with someone like him?
Oh, it'd be awesome. It'd be unbelievable. And again, like lots of point guards are scoring point guards these days, and he certainly is one of those. But he's not afraid to pass the ball either. He trusts everyone. I think that's the biggest thing is the trust he has in all his teammates, and that's huge coming from a point guard that can flat out score the ball. I think to be able to instill that trust within everyone else is massive, and he's been unbelievable.
I think Elvis is trying to choke on whatever he's playing on down there. So hello to Elvis for this week. Sam Menega, maybe he's the biggest beneficiary of what PJC does because they have a great chemistry already, and he seems to love playing against Melbourne United. We saw last year when he had his one breakout game and hit 5 threes and 22 points, it was against Melbourne United, and then I don't know what happened in Cairns, but we virtually didn't see him again for the rest of the season. But then Monday night, 25 points. He shot 10 of 12 from the field, 3 or 4 from downtown. I don't think Melbourne want to come up against him too often.
No, definitely not. He's just that really solid big man inside, can get it going inside. He's got a really nice little hook shot, and he just uses his body so well. But the fact that he can stretch the floor just makes him really hard to guard, especially for Melbourne, where their bigs are legit bigs.
Yes.
It's a lot harder for them to be closing out. And because Melbourne play drops a lot defensively with their bigs, so him picking and popping, they're so worried about PJC getting downhill and getting to the rim. With him popping, their rotations just weren't there.
Yeah.
And
we saw the exact same thing in the first game of the season against Brisbane when he was up against Tyrell Harrison as well.
Same thing. If he's playing their 5, which he is a lot because he's that big body, he can play the 5. He can guard them down the other end with no issue at all.
Yeah.
But the ability to stretch the floor, and he's a knockdown shooter. When his feet are set, it's cash, and he's getting it served on a silver platter to him. So he's been awesome for him, and I think he's still got a lot to grow on. And I think that he's certainly an exciting prospect for New Zealand moving forward.
He made some interesting comments after the game as well, talking about how this year playing for the Breakers and being a New Zealander, he's got more pride in the club he's playing for, more desire to win, it means more to win, and also taking the motivation from feeling like all of Australia doesn't rate us and writes us off, and we want to prove them wrong. From your experience coming up against New Zealanders and playing against the Breakers, does that hold a lot of weight?
Oh, absolutely does. Very proud country, especially for their size, and it's awesome to see local guys being able to play and put on that uniform, and I'm sure it fills them with pride because it's something that they would have grown up watching, and especially with those guys now, they would have grown up watching the elite era of the Breakers, when it was basically them and Perth going at each other a lot. So to be able to pull that jersey on is I'm sure just super proud moment for them. So not overly surprised at those comments at all, and I understand it, especially if you get to pull on a jersey of someone that you grew up rooting for and being super engaged in, and someone that you look up to all the guys on the team that being able to, kind of be on a same playing field as all those kind of heroes, I guess, when you were younger, would be something very special, I'm sure. So,
do you know what he makes me think of now? We spoke at the end of last season when Tom Abercrombie retired, Finn Delaney left, and where does that culture come from? Where does that next Breakers New Zealander come from to lead the club forward? Sam Menenga looks like he's that guy. Absolutely. He looks like that guy.
Yeah, no, I 100% agree. I think he's it. And I think he's obviously embraced the culture perfectly. And I think he's a good one for the club to lean on as kind of that next in line to kind of take the culture over. So, yeah, I mean, that's a great point, actually.
Does Tom actually get a real statue one day?
I don't know. I think it would be fairly well deserved. But there's also a couple other guys that are probably already hanging in those rafters and will be hanging in those rafters that I think would deserve a statue as well.
Well, just lastly, how is Mika Vakona's number still not retired?
Yeah, I'm not sure. I'm not sure what's going on there.
Okay, so I think it's fair to say we're impressed with the Breakers. Also, how can you not be impressed with what the South East Melbourne Phoenix have done? The difference in the first 5 games to the next 5 games is absolutely light and day. They look like a completely different team. They've gone 4-1 since they made the coaching change. They've beaten Melbourne, they've beaten New Zealand, they've beaten Tasmania, and they've beaten the Perth Wildcats. And even the game they lost, they were mighty competitive against the Illawarra Hawks. Yeah. So they put in 5 really good performances. Let me go through some numbers, Cody, and then you can give me your thoughts. So in the first 5 games, they were giving up 92.6 points a game, which was a league high. The last 5 games, they've given up 77, which is a league low. First 5 games, their opponents were shooting 54% from the field, 36% from 3. The last 5 games, their opponents are shooting 49% and 35% from 3, and they're taking 18 less attempts per game as well. So they're also limiting the amounts of shots, and they're rebounding. They couldn't rebound in the first 5 games. They were out-rebounded by 42 in their first 5 games. They've won the rebounding count by 14 in the last 5 games. Defense wins championships, as they always say, Cody, and that's what they're doing.
It absolutely does, and it's crazy to see the difference between the first 5 and the second 5 games, right? The shooting percentages, 54, 36 to 49 and 35, don't look too different, but the fact that they're getting up, or the opponents are getting 18 less shots a game is the big difference maker, right? Which means, A, they're rebounding, they're crashing the boards, and B, they're forcing turnovers.
Yes.
So I think that's the big key for them. And we saw King, as soon as he came in and he was running that first game, you could see him up, yelling at him to be up the floor and up and in all game.
Yeah.
It's going to take them a little while to really get that into their system because that becomes a habit thing. But I love that he's doing that. He's got guys on that team that can do that. You got Sobes and Lewis and Glover and Kenyon. You've got all these guys that can get up the floor and get up and in. And I think that is probably the biggest difference because they're going to be able to force turnovers. They're going to speed teams up and they're going to be able to run the other way. And that's where a lot of those guys play their best basketball is in the transition game. So I think, look, they've been unbelievable and they've been, again, just fun to watch now. It's a completely different team. So, hats off to Sammy Mack who started it all and to King who's kind of just come in and turned it on its head a little bit and changed the way they play. Because they're legit to play against now. So it'll be intriguing to see how they go moving forward and if they can keep it up and kind of how they just keep adjusting to the way King coaches.
Because they made the change so early and because the response has been instant. I mean, they're 4-6 after 10 games, having been 0-5.
Yep.
How competitive can they be? Do you put them in the top echelon of teams?
Yeah, look, I think I probably need to see a bit more, but they're certainly trending in that direction for sure. And it's one of those things that you've got to make those tough decisions early, obviously. And 0-5 is not where you want to start. And then, what was it, 1-14 going back to last year? So that's not ideal. And I think all the staff at the Phoenix have done an unbelievable job to make that call early and move on. And it's clearly working for them at the moment. So, yeah, look, if they can keep this trend going, then, they're a legit contender.
Just before we take our first break, we'll wrap up about the Breakers and the Phoenix. Which one are you most impressed with? And if one of them or both of them keep playing like this, who would you say is more likely to end up being a championship contender? Or both?
At the moment, probably more impressed with the Breakers just because of everything that's kind of gone on in and around it as well, is the travel, the guys being out, and that kind of a thing, and some of these massive wins, I think. But Phoenix are right there as well, I think. Again, same thing I said for Phoenix. If both these teams keep trending the way they're going, then they're both legit contenders. And again, it's defensively. I think they're both really, really good defensively. And I mean, that just, in this league, that's super important. And to be a legitimate contender, you've got to play defense, which is why Melbourne's always in and around it. Tassie's usually in and around it, but you've also got to score a little bit.
Yes.
But both these teams can put points on the board, so that's not an issue. Both super impressive, but at the moment, I think Breakers have just got just the edge, just slightly.
All right. It's been a big first segment just on two teams, really, Cody,
yeah.
but they deserve the attention. So we'll take our first break here from TABtouch and take a look at what's happening around the rest of the league.
Sounds good.
Can you picture the first goal before the ball has even bounced? Can you read the footy future in the mullet of a full forward? You've got the touch. Got the touch? Download the TABtouch app today.
You win some, you lose more.
Okay, back on Hoop 7's basketball hustle, Cody. A lot of positives about the Breakers and the Phoenix. Not so many positives to look at with the Tasmania Jack Jumpers. It's very simple. They can't score the ball, Cody. Their defense is still okay. Their defensive numbers are still okay. I mean, they're only giving up 76 points a game. They're giving up 84 points a game now. Yeah. That's blown out a little bit with a couple of big losses. But really, if they can keep teams around that 80-point mark, it should be enough to win games. But they can't score over 80 points themselves, and sometimes they can't score over 60. No. So they had a franchise low against the Sydney Kings. They only scored 77 a few days earlier against the Phoenix. Across those two games, they just can't shoot either. 34% from the field, 19% from three. How do they figure it out? Do they have to make a personnel change?
I think they do. I mean, we heard Scott Roth say, "You can't figure it out, then what are we doing showing up every week?"
Yeah.
But I think they do. I think they need just another scorer. I mean, it's tough because, Jack was that guy. He was that guy that if everything's kind of fallen away and not much is happening, just chuck him the ball in the post and he'll do something. He'll shoot a fadeaway or a little hook shot, or he'll get the crowd pumped and he'll get the crowd involved, and they don't really have that kind of a character this year. Yeah, they all seem very, I guess, quiet and very introverted and a bit passive, and Doyle is very much a quiet-spoken person from what it seems, and I think Crawford's pretty much the same way, and they're kind of the two guys that need to be leading the charge in terms of offensive output. Yeah, we see both of them just kind of going through the motions a little bit. I think Doyle needs to really take over. I think he needs to not be scared to go out and shoot. Go and have a game where you shoot nearly 30 shots. Yeah. I think he needs to figure out how to get himself going a bit. And look, Scott Roth teams that we're used to have all been very system-oriented, and that's why they've been so good. Yeah. But I think they kind of had all the right pieces at that point, and I think they're missing that piece now without McVeigh. Yeah. So I think it needs to be on the two imports, because they're the main guys. They're their best offensive weapons. Sword's starting to come to the party a little bit, but still I don't think where he needs to be and where Tassie needs him to be. Yeah. So
I mean, I think he had 9 points early in that game against Kings, and then didn't score again the rest of the game.
Yeah. So it's tough. It is tough, and they've got to figure it out soon. Otherwise, the season's going to get away from them, because it's already, I think they're 3-7 at the moment. It's already starting to get away from them. Yeah. So not ideal for the defending champs. But
Crawford and Doyle, you talked about them, and clearly for this team to be good, they need to be putting up 40-plus points a game. Yeah. But it also means that every team they play against knows that they need to completely focus their defense on those two. So they're playing under a lot of pressure right now. So we talked about it with Bryce Cotton over the last 18 months. Everything he does is under pressure. He's not getting a lot of easy looks. Neither are Crawford or Doyle. And the numbers reflected. The two games this weekend, they went 23% from the field combined. They went 1 of 25 from three combined. They only scored 35 points between them across the two games. And really, for them to win, that needs to be probably at 100. Yeah. I mean, to be fair. Yeah. But at the same time, how hard is it when they are playing under such such attention.
Yeah, well, it's difficult, right? That's where like the bigs need to be able to come in and be setting good screens to free them up more, and not necessarily having the ball in their hands to go and get a bucket, but movement off the ball. You know, I think that's probably the big thing. I mean, we've seen that kind of a thing happen with Bryce, and when the ball's just constantly in his hands, it's hard for him to score. Once he's coming off pin downs and turnouts and all that kind of a thing, he gets freed up a lot easier because the bigs are actually willing to set screens for him. I mean, they've got bigs that can set some screens. There's some big bodies in there. So
that's what Magnay's made for. It's what Kristovic is made for.
Exactly. So I think just getting them some easy buckets early, I think, is the big thing, or getting them to the foul line. You know, sometimes we don't see Doyle shoot a shot until late in the first quarter, and sometimes it's a pull-up that's contested or a three that's contested at the end of a shot clock, and teams are kind of figuring out Crawford's moves and his moveset and how to stop him. And
it's tough for Doyle, isn't it? Because he's also probably their best ball handler. Yeah. So it's tough for him to get that balance when he's got to do both, because he's probably a better point guard than what Crawford is.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I think so. And the ball's probably a bit more safe in Doyle's hands. So it's a tough one. It's a really tough one, but I think they probably need to make a move. And again, I'm not sure who's out there or what, but yeah, it's tough because they've got to do something, because what they're doing currently isn't working.
No. They need to find 20 more points a game, to be fair. So somehow need to find that. And
that doesn't have to come from someone they bring in. No. I think someone they bring in has to be able to help generate that 20 points, but doesn't necessarily have to go out and get someone that's going to go and get you 30.
No.
Because they've got guys that can already do that. So again, trying to find that person is difficult.
Yeah. Sydney Kings, much better weekend from them. They did respond. So they lost to Melbourne on the Thursday night, but it was a much better performance in terms of their effort after the two really poor performances last week that we talked about against the Wildcats and the Breakers, where they got outworked by undermanned teams. Jaylen Adams makes the world of difference, doesn't he? He's not fit. He's probably 50% fit. He's really struggling to move. Every time he stops, you can see that his back is giving him a lot of pain. But he makes this a much different looking team. He makes everyone else look better. He makes Cam Oliver look better.
Yep.
Is it as simple as Jaylen being back made the difference, or did they have a good look at themselves?
No, I think having Jaylen back in the lineup just makes them a different team. We saw that when he was healthy earlier in the year. As soon as he came off, they were a different team. You know, so
they couldn't even rest him for a minute, could they?
No, and he does. He looks very sore still, which again, like I've said, I understand that completely. I've had issues with lower back before, and it's something that, especially with the way he plays, like he wouldn't be able to. You clearly see he can't move properly. No. His explosiveness isn't there, which for a guy like that is tough. But with him just the ball in his hand, I think he just makes a world of difference for that team, and he frees up everyone. Like you said, Cam Oliver's a different player with Adams on the floor. Yeah. Cooks is the same. Like Cooks is going to always be elite, but it just frees him up to do the little bits and pieces off the ball, and he doesn't need to have the ball in his hands a lot. And look, they're struggling at the moment. They're just very up and down, and they've got a lot of talent. So I think that obviously JA makes a massive difference, but they've got to be able to, with the talent they have, they've got to be able to cover when he's not out there, because I think they've got more than enough talent to be able to do that.
Interesting. So Brian Goorjian also really shortened his rotation. He'd been going sort of 12 deep for a lot of the season so far, but a lot of that was forced. Jalen Galloway's now out with a shoulder injury, so that was forced. But he also decided to bench Kelly Leopepe, and I don't think he played at all in that first game against Melbourne, and then he only played small minutes against Tasmania. Sean Bruce, very few minutes, and also Robertson, very, very few minutes. Is that a good thing to shorten the rotation?
Well, is it Gorge or is it Tomlinson that's shortened the rotation? Because Billy's the one that seems to be doing all the...
He's calling all the subs, isn't he?
Yeah, and look, I think Gorge has kind of done that for a while. He's had his assistants or his main assistant calling the shots. He kind of calls when he thinks people should be subbed, but I think ultimately
he
it's up
to be Jacomas for a long time, didn't he?
Yeah, well, that's it, right? So, which I don't 100% understand. I think it's... I mean, look, it's great that he's got that kind of faith in his staff, which is really good. Yeah. But I think, it's interesting that that they have shortened it. I think that's probably right, because you're right, they were going 10, 11, 12 deep, all within the first quarter and a little bit. Like, they would constantly, I think the first 5 or 6 games, they had 10 guys on the floor before quarter time.
Yeah, they did.
That's wild. Like, as a player, you find it really hard to get in the rhythm doing that because you're on there for a couple of minutes and you're off. Yeah. Role players, I get, but having your stars coming in and out after 2-3 minutes is not. You're paying these guys lots of money to do what they do and be who they are. Guys like JA and Cooks don't need to be coming off within 3 or 4 minutes of coming back on the floor. They're fit enough to be able to play it out. It's different if it's a 48-minute game like we see in the NBA where guys rest for good chunks of late in the first and early in the second, and same thing with the third and the fourth. But 40 minutes, they don't need to be doing resting like that. I think that shortening their rotations will be good. But yeah, look, it's an interesting one because you got some pretty good players that are just going to be sitting down and not doing a whole lot.
Do you see enough from them this weekend to think that they are close to figuring it out, or do they still have a fair bit to do?
I think they've still got a fair bit to do because they need to figure it out without JA on the floor. Yeah. They have to, because same thing with a back that lingers. That's not something that just gets fixed overnight, and that's probably going to be a lingering thing for the rest of the season now. Whether it's he gets 100%. Or if he gets to 70, 80%, it's still going to be, A, in the back of his mind, and B, it's going to hinder him a little bit. So they need to figure out how to play without him on the floor and play as efficiently and as well as they do without him on the floor. So they've got some work to do for sure.
Just quickly, your thoughts on some of the other teams. Melbourne United, so they still got a win back on Thursday against the Kings, but then blown out of the water in remarkable fashion. Biggest ever loss for Dean Vickerman in an NBL game on Monday night against the Breakers to lose by 34 points. They were outworked as well. They only had 25 rebounds for the game. They had, amazingly, 11 offensive rebounds but 0 second chance points, so they couldn't take advantage of that. Yeah. Where do you think Melbourne's at? Did you see some room for concern, or can you just write it off as one bad night?
No, look, I think Melbourne will be fine. Best thing for their players is I think they've got the first game this week, so it's a very short
Thursday night. Yeah,
very short turnaround, so they won't have to be worried too much about on court this week. But yeah, look, I think they'll be fine. They got so many veteran guys, and obviously this was a bit of a one-off, and you don't see that very often. I mean, it's not often you see Dean calling 2 timeouts within about 2.5, 3 minutes of each other. Yeah. So I mean, that was a bit of the writing on the wall, and just one of those games where just everything went wrong for them, really, and everything went right for the Breakers, and that was all credit to the Breakers as well. It was because of what they did. Yeah. If we see it happen again, or something trending in that same way again, then you'd probably start to have those red flags start to pop up. But I think you can probably write this one off as just a bit of a crappy game.
What about the Perth Wildcats? So they were really good against the Hawks. They started that game on fire at home. They went 9 of 12 from 3 in that first quarter. They put up 39 points in the first quarter. They were terrific the entire game. Ben Henschel was great. Dylan Windler was great. They combined for 10 threes between them, and then they had a lot of guys playing roles. Pinder, Pepper, Doolittle, Withers, all really good games. And then they laid an egg on Sunday in Melbourne against the Southeast Melbourne Phoenix. They didn't have Dylan Windler. He looks like he's struggling to back up games at the moment. And as a team, they struggled. I mean, it's tough when you play 36 hours later and you've got the travel. You only need to listen to Brian Gorge and talk about it, how the Sydney Kings went when they had to do it twice. So it's tough on them, but I'm sure they're still not making excuses for a 24-point loss. What do you make of the Wildcats?
Yeah, just polar opposite. Over the same weekend is pretty surprising. You're right, they were super impressive against the Hawks. I mean, defensively, they're still just really bad. Yes. I mean, yeah, they won against the Hawks, but they still gave up 105 points. Yes. That's not great. You've got to be able to score 113 to be able to keep winning those sorts of games, and that's not always going to happen.
Well, they gave up 60% field goal shooting for the Hawks.
Yeah, exactly. It's an interesting one. Look, they were certainly starting to figure it out. It's interesting how much better they move the ball without Bryce on the floor. And we did speak about this last week. I don't think they're necessarily a better team without Bryce. I mean, Bryce he would make any team better. But the ball doesn't stick as much. Yeah. And again, you see Henschel come out and do what he did against the Hawks and then couldn't hit anything against the Phoenix. So it's one of those things that shots are going to dry up. You're going to have nights where everyone's firing. especially at home. You know, you make a couple, all of a sudden the Red Army's getting behind you and loud and rowdy, and makes it a lot easier to shoot those shots.
Yes.
On the road, a lot more difficult, right? So, like we said with New Zealand and Southeast Melbourne, defensively is where you're going to start to separate yourself in this league. The Cats are not there at the moment. They really need to figure out that end of the floor. And I think just inconsistencies with their rebounding. Some nights they're unbelievable. I mean, we saw it against the Kings when they beat the Kings. They were unbelievable. That's as good as I've seen them rebound for a long time. And then, you know, that kind of falls away a little bit. Guys like Pinder, I think he's super elite and then goes missing. I think he needs to be a bit more of a driving force especially with Bryce out, he needs to be that bit of a driving force for that team and be that guy that's the go-to guy and the engine room for them. Because I think he's at that point in his career where he can do that. Because we've seen how good he can be. It's a tough one. It's a tough one because they can be really good. They can be in that upper echelon of teams in this league. But we've also seen them be on the complete opposite end of the scale. Fair bit to work on for them.
What about the Sunshine Slog? It's what it did turn out to be between the Taipans and the Bullets on Saturday night up in Cairns between the Taipans and the Bullets. The Bullets got the win in the end, but they had to come from 12 points down at the start of the fourth quarter. So, you know, credit to the Taipans because they were still missing Taron Armstrong and Tanner Groves and Pedro Bradshaw, and their new signing, Deshaun Taylor, had only arrived in Cairns about 3 hours before the game started, so he was never going to be able to suit up either. No. And then Kyle Adam was also out with a shoulder injury as well, so just to add to their woes. So good effort from the Taipans to be that competitive. The Bullets got a win that there was really no excuse to not get in the end as well, so they took care of business in the end. What do you make of these two teams?
Well, it took a big fourth quarter for them to get the win. So, no, look, Cairns, they're one of those teams that can really make all the excuses in the world. With all the injuries they've got right now. It's crazy. And we saw how much of a different team they are with Taron Armstrong in there. And then, I mean, they're missing 6 main guys. Like, it's not right. You take your top 5 guys out of any other team, you'd find it very hard to even be competitive. So, look, you do feel sorry for them, but I think that don't make excuses. It's the same as New Zealand. They don't make excuses. They just go out and play hard every night. And that's probably a tough one. They probably feel like they probably should have won this one. And on the other hand, Brisbane just are not figuring it out at the moment. They're just it's really strange because, like we said pre-season, they were one of the most well-primed teams coming into the season.
They were,
I think that I did say winning that pre-season tournament is a curse, so it seems to have continued. I don't know. It's a really odd team. I think we're seeing Harrison start to really be that big that we thought he was going to be, and that kind of most improved, bit of a push for that most improved player.
They're not very athletic, are they?
No, they're not. They're not. They've got a bunch of guys that work hard, for sure, but they're certainly, you're right, they're certainly not athletic. You know, it's kind of the back end of Casey Prather's career where he was a super athlete, where now that he's been through those few injuries, that's kind of eluded him a little bit now. But Norto, again, a bit like me, can't jump over a credit card, but again, will put his body on the line for everything. And I think a lot of those guys, Bannon's the same. He's not overly athletic at all, but just works hard. So they've got to figure out how to get after those athletic teams, because there's lots of teams that are just fully, just top to bottom, super athletes. So look, they're making strides. I think they're slowly getting there. They're starting to figure it out a little bit each week, but at the moment it kind of seems to be a little bit of they'll move two steps forward one week and then revert back 2 steps the next week. So figuring out how to just keep chipping away and keep getting better each weekend, I think is huge for them. Because again, they're at pretty much full strength, aren't they?
Only missing Dingadell.
Dingadell again, who I'm sure most people forgot was even on the roster.
Well, it's an interesting one. Have they also been hurt by the schedule? For the first eight rounds, they only play 1 game a week, so they've actually got a whole week in between games. Mike Wells has talked about this with Adelaide, the frustration about finishing a game with momentum, and then when you don't play again for 7 or 8 or 9 days, you're eventually starting from scratch again when you come out again.
Yeah.
Has that hurt Brisbane also, just not be able to build momentum because they've got too long in between games?
Yeah, look, I think so. And that does play a big part, for sure. Because, like you said, momentum's a heck of a thing in this league. If you've, got momentum, getting a big win against a team, and then you don't play for 11 days like some of the gaps have been, that does. It just absolutely ruins you. You're training all week. You've got a couple break days because you don't want to be training for 10 straight days. Yeah. So, you usually train for a few days, take a break, another few days, maybe another break, and then you're back on the court properly again. That's massive in the middle of a season. Like, that's the stuff that just, you find it almost impossible to keep any momentum going. So, yeah, look, that is certainly something that could be hindering them at the moment. And, they're finding it hard to kind of catch any kind of momentum at the moment. So a couple of doubles might be good for them.
Yes. They finally get some doubles after they get through this Thursday night. So, all right, let's take a break. We'll hear from TABtouch, Cody, then come back and we'll keep talking about the Bullets because they've got a big milestone for their captain, and then we'll have a preview of round 8.
Perfect.
He'll make it for sure. That's why I backed him on TABtouch.
You got the touch. You got the power. Got the touch? Choose TABtouch. Better your bet. Download the app today.
Imagine what you could be buying instead.
Okay, back on Hoop 7's Basketball Hustle. Last segment for this week, Cody. Let's start with talking about one of your former teammates. The Brisbane Bullets captain Mitch Norton plays his 350th NBL game Thursday night against Melbourne United at the Brisbane Entertainment Centre. Remarkable that he started his career as an 18-year-old in Townsville. Yeah. He was the youngest ever captain at the Crocs. He played at the Crocs until they didn't exist anymore. Yep. Goes to the Hawks for a couple of years, comes to Perth, wins 2 championships, and now in his second season at the Bullets, and he's already the captain there. As a former teammate of his, give me a little bit of an insight into what it's like to call him a teammate.
Oh, it's great. And look, he's, again, like I said, something similar with Jace Kadee in that he's just an unbelievable leader, and he's a unbelievable human being. And, he's one of those guys that will always work his butt off. Doesn't matter what's going on, whether he's got a bung hip or anything, he's still going to be the first to the floor and making those championship plays. And, I couldn't have been happy when he got his first championship because, I think that he's one of those guys that's super deserving of that kind of a thing. And I'm actually surprised that he only played 116 with Townsville. I feel like he was there forever. But
Well, he was because before he even played a game, he was there wiping up the floors as a youngster.
No, it's great. And look, to make 350 games and he's still got plenty left in his tank is super impressive. And, he's gone through a fair amount off the court as well with him and his wife, Sasha, that obviously doesn't help when you're trying to play professional basketball. It's always tough when you've got some issues going on off the floor. So, but you'd never know it watching him play because he's always doing everything for everyone else. And yeah, look, he's one of my favourite teammates, and we've known each other for a long, long time, and even before we played at the Hawks together. So back to the Institute days, and yeah, look, he's very deserving of making 350 because that's very impressive that anyone can make that number of games. And like I said, he's got plenty in the tank. I see him easily getting that 400.
And hello to Elvis for managing to find his noisiest toys just as we are recording. So thank you for making your presence felt as well. What's he like as a person away from the court, Cody? Have you spent a lot of time with him? Yeah, look, very, very chill, very laid back. And yeah, just a great dude. Bit of a smart ass, which is always fun. He and Nick Kay were pretty inseparable when they were together, and when we were in the Illawarra Hawks together. And I mean, he was always one of those guys that would be back in the afternoons after trainings, just working out, getting better, and doing all those little things. And he's just a winner, just in every sense of the word. So look, again, very very proud of him, and it's awesome to see. And like you touched on, he's not only got a lot left in him, he's having a big impact on the Bullets this season because they have turned their season around once they moved him into the starting point guard role. Him playing that point guard spot has brought out the best in James Bateman, and he's playing great defense. I mean, I know that Rob Edwards still scored 27 points from Cairns on Saturday night, but he had to earn every single one of those points thanks to thanks to Nordo, and he played 34 minutes of the game at a really high intensity. He made 2 massive shots in the fourth quarter of that game as well. So he's defending, he's running the point guard spot, he's creating for his teammates, he's scoring. He's still one of the best Australian guards we've got in the league.
Oh, totally agree. And he's one of those guys that you'll never hear him talk about it. He's one of the most humble blokes you'll ever meet. So, I mean, we've said it multiple times on the show. Once he steps on the floor, they look like a completely different team. And just his level-headedness and ability to get everyone on the same page is, I think, something that goes under the radar a little bit and something that's super important. And you're right, he's certainly one of the best locals still.
He hasn't officially won a Damian Martin trophy as the league's best defensive player, but one season on our award, thanks to Damo on this show, he did get the best defensive player award. That's no surprise, I'm sure.
No, not at all. And again, that's something that I feel like goes a little unnoticed in his game is how good he is defensively. He's a little bulldog.
Yeah.
And he reads the game so well. And look, surprising that he hasn't won it before, but no, he's always one of the elite defenders in the league.
Speaking of Bulldogs, hello to Elvis, who's now taking a break after his little effort of going nuts during our whole Nordo discussion. So if Nordo listens to this and hears some strange noises, it's just Elvis. So just ignore him. Let's get to round 8 in the NBL, Cody. Thanks to TABtouch. Head to tabtouch.com.au or the TABtouch app and check out all of these odds. It starts Thursday night with that game, the Brisbane Bullets in Mitch Norton's 350th against Melbourne United at the Brisbane Entertainment Centre. I've spoken to Justin Schuller a little bit about this over the last year. Every time they seem to play Melbourne United, it's coming off a bad loss from Melbourne, and Melbourne's got a point to prove, and they come out and unfortunately put the Bullets to the sword. Yep. So does the same thing happen again on Thursday night?
I can't see it not happening. You're right. I think even though it's a short turnaround, Melbourne will have something to prove after last game, and again with all the veterans on that team, they'll be expecting a fairly high level of competition. So look, I do think Melbourne get that one for sure.
Second up on Thursday night, this one's interesting as well. The Perth Wildcats. We have to assume still without Bryce Cotton. I don't think he's close enough to coming back, but they would certainly be hoping Dylan Windler's back. But they take on a Tasmania Jack Jumpers team who, again, they've played a lot of games already. They've already played 10 games this season, and now they played in Sydney on Sunday. I think Scott Ross said that they will spend Monday in Sydney and then come straight to Perth on Tuesday. So as we record this, they're probably already in Perth. High-scoring team against a low-scoring team. Who wins?
Look, I think the Cats will just have too much firepower at the moment. They're just going to put too many points on the board that Tassie won't be able to keep up with. And honestly, I think that's pretty much it. Like, they're just... Tassie's got to figure out how to be able to put points on the board. It's the end of it, because defensively, they're always going to be in the top couple teams in the league. But you do still need to be able to score. So, and the Cats can certainly do that.
Yes.
So I think the Cats get that one.
Just the one game on Friday night, but it's a fascinating one for all the reasons we spoke about earlier in the show. The Sydney Kings at home to the Southeast Melbourne Phoenix. Can the Kings make a bit more of a statement, or do the Phoenix lock them down and continue their momentum?
I'm really liking the way that the Phoenix are trending. I think that just becoming a focal point on the defensive end has just completely changed the way they play. And it changed the way they play offensively as well. And I think the Kings have still got some cracks that they need to fill. And again, hopefully Jaylen Adams is feeling better again and is out there for a bit longer and a bit more himself, because league's a better place when he's in it. So I think the Phoenix get that one. I think they figure it out and keep trending up.
I think there's a chance Derek Walden Jr. is back for this game for the Phoenix as well. Too. Does he disrupt things, though, now that they've started to figure things out?
A little bit, but they're still in the very early stages of figuring it out. So I think it's probably a good time for him to slot back in. You'd be better off with him slotting in now rather than another 2-3 weeks down the track if they do keep figuring it out when they're all steam, heading forward. So look, that's something that we probably haven't spoken about enough. Is a guy like Derek Walton who hasn't hit the floor for them for quite some time now, and he's a game changer as well. So it'd be good to see if he was on there.
When the Kings won those two championships, we talked a lot about whether Jaylen Adams or Derek Walden was the better point guard. I'm fascinated to see them play against each other and let them battle it out to find out.
Oh, absolutely. Unfortunately, it won't be at 100% each, but that'd be good. It'd be really good.
Saturday night, Gee, Tasmania Jack Jumpers again.
Doesn't get easier, does it?
It doesn't. So they played in Sydney on Sunday, Perth on Thursday. Now they go back home on Saturday. So it's a big trip. That's less than 48 hours to get from Perth to Hobart. And they're playing the New Zealand Breakers. So right now, we're the best team in the league. Any chance for the Jack Jumpers?
That's a tough one. I think the way with New Zealand's playing, you'd be silly not to back them at this point. And yeah, look, they come from playing on Monday night, so they've got a good little break and then play on Saturday with Tassie having a backup.
That's probably their biggest.
Quick.
That's probably their longest break all season long.
Yeah, it would be.
And it's only 5 days.
They probably don't know what to do with themselves.
No.
So yeah, look, it's hard not to back New Zealand in that one.
Melbourne United and the Perth Wildcats, both having played on Thursday night. Yeah, we'll know a lot more about how they both bounce back on Thursday night. Firstly, but yeah, it's a big game.
It is. It's a bit of a flip of the coin on this one. I think. Yeah, it's legitimately a flip of the coin. I think that if Melbourne can figure it out defensively, then they'll get the job done. But we've seen them a few times already this year leak some considerable points. So, if Perth's firing the same way that they did the start of last round, then I think there'll be a shot. But I do think Melbourne get it. Tomorrow
on Sunday. First up, the South East Melbourne Phoenix. They're at home to the Cairns Taipans, but hopefully the Taipans start to get some troops back. So Deshaun Taylor, their import injury replacement, will be right to play, and I think Taron Armstrong should be right to play this game. You would hope. Does that give them a chance?
Yeah, it certainly does. I think if Armstrong's even close to full strength, then it certainly gives them a chance. It's going to be a tough one for the Phoenix anyway, because Cairns tend to be able to scrap the game up and play to the way they want to play, which is, not necessarily the prettiest brand of basketball in the world, but it works for them. And that's kind of how they want to play. So it'll be a good test for Phoenix to see really where they're at. Look, I think if Taron does play, I think Cairns have a legitimate chance there. But again, I do think that Phoenix are trending in the right direction. They've got a pretty quick turnaround as well. So I'm actually going to go with Cairns in that one. Yeah, I'm going to go with Cairns, especially if Taron's playing.
Yeah. Then last up, Adelaide 36 is at home to the Illawarra Hawks. So the 36 is very disappointing in Auckland on Saturday against the Breakers. The Hawks, they've had 9 days to think about a loss in Perth as well, which I'm sure Justin Tatum has let them know all about. And you would hope for their sake they get Trey Kell back as well. This might be the game I'm most looking forward to all weekend.
Yeah, me too. It's primed to be the best game all weekend, I think. And it's going to be a really interesting one because two teams that need to back up and really figure it out after last week. So I think, it's a tough one too. It's a really tough one. I'll back the old club. I'll go with the Hawkies on that one. All
right, there we go. So head to TABtouch and find out the odds for all of those games, and we'll have a couple of exclusives and multis throughout the week as well, Cody. A couple of things I want to ask you before we wrap up. Did Justin Tatum have a point last week that he is being unfairly picked on? Because out of this whole weekend, how is he the coach that gets a tech foul, and John really doesn't get one? Dean Vickerman doesn't get one. You can point it right across the board. Nobody else gets a tech foul. How does he get a tech foul?
Yeah, I'm glad you brought it up because it's becoming ridiculous. I think, it's kind of both sides, right? I think he was obviously unfairly given a tech compared to what some other coaches do. Yeah. But also I think it needs to be, we're at a point now where there's constant bitching and bickering about and to the refs from not just coaches but players as well. Every possession seems to be complaint that there wasn't a foul called, or complain because there was a foul called, or this, that, and the other. Refs, I think, need to go to the complete opposite end of the scale and just start teching people. All right, no, too much tech, done. Because that's going to calm everyone else down. Yes. Right? If you get a second tech, you get thrown. Yeah. I think if they can start setting a bit of a precedent on, you can't talk to us like that, then everyone, I think, will calm down. It got to that point a few years ago where they started anything that was aimed towards them was basically a tech. Yeah. And again, it probably went a bit too far, but to be able to rein it in, you have to go that extra step too far. Yeah. So, Look,
we saw Modi Bayor get ejected just for trying to talk to Chris Reid at halftime.
Yes, exactly. So that's all part of it, right? You don't want to go that far, but I think to be able to rein in some of the coaches and even the players, I think they need to just start handing out texts a bit quicker and easier because it's getting a bit ridiculous and it's getting hard to watch.
Speaking of ridiculous, one thing that caught my eye. Now, I've never been in a position, and I never will be, to dunk on anybody in a game. You probably have. You've probably also been dunked on. But if your team is 30 points down in a game, there's 5 seconds to go, and you do a nice dunk, that's great. I mean, still play out the game, but are you in any position to then scream in the opponent's face and rub his nose in it, Cody?
No, absolutely not. Absolutely not. That's crazy. I mean, even if you're up 30, that's ridiculous. Yeah. I mean, but down 30, you got absolutely no right to yell and scream. I don't care how big the dunk is.
No, and I did notice that Nick Marshall's dunk was then one of the dunks of the week. That's now you can be voted on, and not only did he get in his opponent's face, it was in the face of Carlin Davison, who's a New Zealand Breakers development player.
Yeah.
That probably makes it a bit worse, even as well.
Yeah, a little bit, and that's not ideal. And no, I haven't been dunked on. Jeez, come on now. Jeez.
And in fairness to Nick, I do wish I could dunk like him. So,
absolutely.
So full credit to him for the dunk. There was nothing wrong with the
nothing wrong with that
dunk.
at all.
Yep.
Absolutely.
So, all right, Cody, that's been a lot for us to get through. As usual, by the time we finish recording, Elvis has decided to conk out, so he saves it for the end. He's fast asleep right now, so well done to him for wearing himself out. But it's a lot to get through in an hour. Well done, especially to the New Zealand Breakers and the South East Melbourne Phoenix. I want to point them out for turning their seasons around. But I'll wrap it up there. I'm Chris Pike, but leave you with the final words as always, Cody.
Yeah, looking forward to some big games this weekend and some teams starting to trend upwards, which is always fun.
Can you picture the first goal before the ball's even bounced? You might have the touch. When the weather's wet, can you feel who'll triumph? You've got the power. Can you read the footy future in the mullet of a full forward? Then you too might be harnessing the power of the touch. Got the touch? Download the TABtouch app today.
You win some, you lose more. For free and confidential support, call 1-800-858-858 or visit gamblinghelponline.org.au.